Well, speaking of, bad things going on right now, I mean, we've just got a whole slew of bad things going on. And I think it's only fair to start with what's going on over there in Sri Lanka or what happened yesterday.
Tragic.
I mean, almost 300 people killed at this point, and that number is probably going to keep going up as people who are injured may, pass away. There were almost 500 people separately injured who didn't die. So that's a terrorist attack, taking out about 1,000 people in total. I mean, that's huge. That's huge. And it was 8 different bombs, several different locations. They bombed a number of churches. And can you even imagine right in the middle? I mean, this is the highest holy day of the Christian calendar is Easter or Resurrection Day, whatever you want to call it, but the day that commemorates the day that Jesus rose from the dead. That is sort of the pinnacle of Christianity. And so I'm sure this date was very carefully chosen by whoever wanted to do these attacks to make the maximum negative effect on the Christians. I mean, this was clearly targeting the Christians in Sri Lanka, of whom there are not all that many. It's actually very much the minority. Sri Lanka is majority Hindu. And I don't know if you're familiar with the fact. I mean, Sri Lanka's been in a civil war. I mean, it's been over for about 10 years.
That was about 2009 it ended, right?
Yeah, and it had started back in the early 80s.
Right.
I mean, it's like a 30-year war, almost 30 years that they were at this, dealing with this civil war. And that was between some ethnic peoples who called themselves the Tamil people. I don't know if you've heard of that, Tamil Tigers. You heard of the Tamil Tigers? They're kind of famous. And this is all going on right in Sri Lanka proper, which is a pretty small island off the tip of India. And, but it's got a decent-sized population of about 20-something million people. And the city yesterday where these bombings occurred was Colombo, which obviously was named after Christopher Columbus, but Colombo, and that has about a population of about 6 million people. So for a relatively small island, it's actually got a pretty sizable population. I mean, the population density is significantly higher than what it is here in Tampa Bay.
Sure. Put
it that way. But this civil war has been going on this small island for 30 years, and they've been blowing each other up. They've had terrorist attacks. I mean, the Tamil Tigers are actually known as the terrorist group, and they're not purely Islamic. So it's not this isn't necessarily, the Tamil Tigers weren't necessarily Islamic terror, but they were known as the group that first started using women suicide bombers. The first ones ever to use women. So they've been blowing each other up in Sri Lanka for a long time now, and that had finally calmed down. And until what we're now seeing come out, which I see this morning and some in the evening last night, some of the allocation of responsibility for this particular attack, then it does look like it's being allocated to Islamic terrorists, a group that's sort of affiliated with the ISIS movement worldwide, the ISIS caliphate. And so, originally when I heard about this, I was talking to some friends yesterday and family, and, I was cautioning everybody, we need to be careful not to quickly blame this on Muslim terrorists, because of the history in Sri Lanka, of there being these kind of bombings and things. And this could have been actually Hindu terrorists. But now we see it does look like, it certainly had all the hallmarks of Islamic terrorism, multiple coordinated attacks at the same time. They say that's one of the hallmarks of the Al-Qaeda and ISIS terrorists and what they try to do and try to accomplish. So it does seem like based on what I'm reading now, that responsibility has been allocated. I'm not sure if it's been accepted by the group, but it's been pretty clearly allocated to the group. So I don't know that they've claimed responsibility yet, and that may be coming. But I think the authorities are saying this was Islamic terror, which is, frankly, guys, when we saw it,
said that.
Yes. When we saw it, that's what first came to mind, right?
Yes, and I was just reading a story about. Are you familiar with Anders Holch Povelsen? He's a Danish billionaire.
No.
He's the wealthiest man in
Denmark?
Well, yes, thank you. In Danish, no, in Denmark, yes. It's Monday. In any case, just awful. He was there on vacation with his wife and his family, and 3 of his children were those who were killed.
Oh, it's, you can't even, it's hard for me to even imagine. This is a celebration day. It's a happy day. I'm sure nobody was expecting this, particularly the people at the churches. And one of these churches the bomb was so severe that it blew the roof off the church.
What about sitting in a church now and think people expect it probably now?
Well,
if not, you're going to have guards at the front door.
Yeah,
metal detectors at one point.
Is that what we're coming to?
It's just there's no other answer because you can't stop this stuff.
You can't stop it, and that's the key, Pat, because if they didn't get you at your church, they'll go get you where you're having Sunday brunch at the hotel or something.
Well, no, in international hotels. Mm-hmm. The bigger the better they go after.
Well, that's what I mean. People that were out having breakfast that morning were celebrating the Easter holiday. That's why they were out. That's why they were out at the hotels. That's why they were all dressed up and everything else. Right. And these people came and stood in line. I mean, one of the guys apparently stood in the buffet line till he got up to the front and blew himself up. I mean, it's just hard to even fathom the kind of shock that you'd experience if you were involved if you were around when something like that happened.
And like, how do you stop something like you don't?
That's right.
Just standing there.
It's impossible. Yeah. It's at some point, it's
especially
like they used to say about
do the suicide bombing.
Yeah, right. And it's kind of like what they would say about people wanting to assassinate the president or something. They say, if you're willing to trade your life for the president, then you might be able to get him. I mean, that's the point. At some point, we can have a lot of, procedures and processes in place to try to prevent something, but it's impossible. It's just not possible. If somebody is willing to trade their life in a suicide bombing, some of them are going to get through. And at least 8 of them got through yesterday. And apparently there were other bombs that didn't go off, that were also slated for detonation. Some of those apparently have been blown up this morning by the authorities. So, and yet there's the guy. I saw him all over the... I mean, he looks guilty. I hate to say it, but, he just, I'm not sure if we even need to have a trial. I'm just looking at that guy and I'm going, he's guilty. Right. He's definitely guilty.
The one who's... Is he taking responsibility for it? It looks like he may be.
I don't know. I don't know if he's come out and done that yet.
Maybe not. Okay, it's just a question. Is this the mastermind? Is
that the mastermind? Because I know that he, and there he is giving the ISIS salute, which is the one finger up symbol, and that's the I for ISIS, or ISIL, whatever you want to call it, Islamic State. So, these folks are out there. We know that. I mean, it's interesting because here we are talking about the Sri Lanka, and just to close out on that, because we could talk about that the whole show today, I just want to say personally, I think the 3 of us, our thoughts and prayers are with those people in Sri Lanka. I was very disturbed by that. And I don't think you've seen anything near the media exposure of some of that and the tone that you heard when we had the mosque attack in New Zealand, which killed fewer people, frankly, and was less spectacular. But the tone is different. If you even watch what some of the chattering class is saying, like former President Obama, and they don't want to mention that the attack was directed to Christians on their highest holy day. They don't want to mention that. So they say this is an attack on all of humanity and all religions or that sort of thing. But, when they were talking about the mosque shooting in New Zealand, they were very explicit that this was an attack on the Muslim population and that we, the chattering class, we, the representatives, whatever they are, we stand with the Muslims. And they were very clear about that. So I just think it's interesting when you look at these two things, they won't say that about the Christians. They won't say it. And, and I'm getting tired of Christians getting blamed for things like terrorism and stuff like that because, they always bring up the Crusades and stuff, and that we don't have time to cover all this in this show. But, the Crusades weren't this horrible reign of Christian terrorism in the Middle East. I mean, remember what the Crusades were all about was protecting pilgrims from Europe who were traveling to the Middle East, who were being attacked, abused, robbed, raped, and killed on the way. So that's what the Crusades were about, was protecting pilgrims who wanted to go down there.
Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.